now. Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started in one moment, and I'm just going to give some brief overview remarks, and then we'll begin. So good evening, and welcome to the Professional Lessons Learned from Alumni in the School of Business. I'm Greg Bernard, Director of Alumni Relations, and a member of the class of 2004. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Alumni Association for their continued support of all of our alumni programming, the Office of Career and Professional Development, and of course, the School of Business and our alums. To give you a little background on this program, we developed this series to assist our alumni professionals as they continue to engage in their career. It's important to highlight voices who've achieved different levels of professional success while providing context for their journeys, which may broaden the perspective for those joining us this evening. Tonight's panel will provide insights from diverse Southern alums regarding steps, opportunities, and engagements that enhance their overall professional profiles. In order to avoid any potential audio or visual issues or interruptions to the program, all of our participants have been muted upon entry and will remain muted, both audio and visual, throughout the program. We do recommend you turn your Zoom viewing options to active speaker view in order to optimize the programmatic experience, as we will be recording this. To ask questions, we ask that participants use the chat feature to communicate, which will be monitored throughout and questions shared during the Q&A segment. Lastly, if time permits, we will try to leave some time, room at the end for any real-time questions to be asked directly to our panelists. And with that, I would like to introduce our moderator for the evening. This is Amy Grotsky, Assistant Director of External Relations in the School of Business.
Thanks, Greg. So I'm so excited today to have our panelists here to talk about their experiences post-graduation, and have our students and our alumni and our friends who are here with us today to hear about the different career paths and options that are available to people who graduate from Southern with a business degree. So first, I would like to introduce Jim Bellata. Jim received his Bachelor of Science from Southern in computer science, as well as his MBA at Southern. He's currently the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Alumni Pharmaceuticals in Cambridge. I'd also like to introduce Lakeisha Jordan, who also received her BS at Southern as well as her MBA. Lakeisha is currently the Vice President, Regional Corporate Responsibility Officer at KeyBank. And Lakeisha is also on our Dean's Business Advisory Council. Our third panelist is Miriam Norzad. Miriam received her Bachelor of Science in Business Administration with a concentration in accounting just last year. She just graduated in May. She's currently an assurance accountant at EY. So thank you and welcome to our panelists. You guys would like to turn on your cameras. Wonderful. Thank you for being here. So I have a handful of questions to ask, but first, if we could just hear a little bit about each of you, a little bit about your experience and how you got to where you are from your time at Southern. So Jim, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, thank you. So I graduated Southern Business School in 2003, and also got my undergrad at Southern in computer science. And then went on to work for a management consulting firm, actually, and utilizing the MBA, which is great. I actually was fortunate enough to win the Outstanding Student Award at Southern in the management program, which was a great honor, actually. And I think it really, for me, was applicable in the management consulting arena, and then later kind of moving into the biopharma life sciences industry, and kind of advancing up through various roles, director roles, ultimately to become vice president of a company in New Haven called Alexion Pharmaceuticals, and then and CIO. And then, and then Synergiva Pharmaceuticals in Boston, and now Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer here at Alumni Pharmaceuticals. And congratulations for saying that correctly, Amy. Here in Cambridge, Mass, which is we're right on the Boston border. You can see Boston out my window.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I practiced. Miriam, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Miriam Norsad, and I graduated from Southern in May of 2021, so not too long ago. And I started working at EY in October of 2021. I am a little bit about myself is I am a mom to two beautiful girls, and I attended Southern while having both of my daughters, so which made my experience that much more unique. While at Southern, I was a part of the Muslim Student Association as well as the Accounting Society, and I have done 2 internships while attending Southern as well. And I'm excited to share my experience with all of you.
Great, thank you. Lakeisha.
Thanks, Amy. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lakeisha Jordan, and I am a double graduate, 2004 and 2006. I have an interesting journey in my career from Southern. I started off after taking what we call a gap year. I landed at Southern and was a undergraduate social work major. And on that journey, I landed at a investment boutique and really found a passion that I didn't know that I had. Completed my undergraduate degree, decided at that time I wanted to pursue my business degree and received my master's at Southern as well. Went on to corporate America, working in various roles in business and commercial banking for larger banks, and finally landed at KeyBank, where I had the opportunity to marry both of my degrees, doing work that I really love from a very unique lens in the finance industry. I'm happy to be here with you all this evening to share and learn more.
Thank you. It occurs to me that this is somewhat unusual these days that people are actually working in the fields that they got their degree in, but all 3 of our panelists have found work and interesting work that is tied to your degrees. So that's wonderful. Speaking of that, what is some advice you can give in terms of career planning for our students who are trying to picture themselves in these professional careers and wondering how to get there from where they're at now? Lakeisha, do you want to tackle that one first?
Sure. Interesting advice. Be nimble. Know that having what you have your eyes set on now may not be where you land. I personally believe in building a personal board of directors, and I have found that to be extremely beneficial on my journey. And instead of having a mentor in my field, I have various mentors, and whether they're peers, professionals that are both older and younger than I am, people in the industry, someone that's a relative that you can depend on that will give you some honest feedback and constructive criticism without saying ouch. I found that to be very beneficial and has really been very impactful as I navigate my professional career.
That's great. I love that. Miriam.
Thank you, Amy. In terms of career planning, I would like to just say that students should utilize all the resources that are available to them within Southern. For myself, I know the Office of Career and Professional Development, as well as the Business Success Center and the Academic Success Center were key to my success, especially around like my sophomore, junior year is when I started to really think about what I wanted to do after I graduated. And there's no better place to go than to people who already have that experience. And these resources, in my experience, have helped me become more prepared for real world situations. And then another thing is before you graduate, you are already building a network. And I cannot stress how important it is to have a network to support your journey.
It's great. Thank you. And I was fortunate enough to get to see Miriam go through her college experience and work with her through the Business Success Center and the Women's Leadership Program. And so I'm so pleased to hear you say that. Jim.
Yeah, I actually like what Lakeisha said about the board of directors or the support group. And Miriam, I agree with what you said too about having this strong network. I think from a career planning perspective, at least from my point of view, it's find your passion, right? And your passion will lead you to be motivated, and it'll lead you to be excited about what you do. People will recognize that in you. And your career will chart its course. So you'll meet people along the way who will be overwhelmed by you, and they'll think, hey, this person really loves what they do, and you'll become great at it. Use the MBA as a tool to sort of guide, and get you the opportunities, I think, that the MBA gives you. It opens a lot of doors that, potentially be closed if you didn't have that. I think from my perspective, from plotting your course, it's gonna take shape as you go. I know when I started out, I actually when I graduated from college, I always wanted to be a programmer, and it's still a passion of mine. I love it. But it's basically going into an industry that I loved kind of charted my way to ultimately becoming the CIO of a pharma company. And I found along the way that, I really was interested in saving lives and with medicine and really the good that these companies can do, especially the biotechnology companies that are really on the forefront of sort of this unmet need. And so you find your calling as you go. Don't expect that you're going to know right out of the door with your MBA exactly kind of what you're going to become. You have goals for sure, but what's the old expression? Man plans and God laughs, right? I think you'll find your way along. And the people, like I said, the people that you will meet will help chart that course for you, because they're going to show you the opportunities that your personality really has kind of gotten you. So I think, being open to taking risks and sort of allowing your common sense and your interest and your passion to drive you are going to kind of, chart your career and lead your career path. And the MBA is an absolutely a tool that's going to open doors for you so that you pave the way with that. So it won't be a roadblock for you sort of advancing through that career pathway for you.
That's great. That actually leads me into my next question a little bit, which is, what's one of the most impactful or memorable moments you've had throughout your work or career journey? Is there anything that has sort of been a catalyst for a pivot that's sort of changed your path? And Jim, do you want to start and take that?
I've had a few. One thing for me was early on, I was paired up with a partner at a consulting company who was just really, really trying to change my view of what I could accomplish, right? I joined this company and we were going into organizations who were going through considerable change. Oftentimes it was M&A, a lot of technology driven stuff, but you're in this situation where you really don't know essentially what you might be doing. You're going in, you're kind of working with people, you're gathering requirements and you're solutioning, and they're listening to you. And and I started out really just sort of as taking notes and being the sort of process mapping person. And you suddenly realize that when you're thrown into the fire like that, you can respond. And you can, if you think of it as sink or swim, you can swim. And for me, that experience was like, wow, I can really do a lot more than maybe I thought I could. And I can become good at something that maybe I didn't really set out to do, which was the business side of IT, right? And you become impassioned with it, and et cetera. And then moving into the life sciences industry, I had someone very close to me, my father, who had a rare disease that was unmet, no medications for it, et cetera. And you watch the pain that the family goes through, not just the patient, but the family. And you think to yourself, that's where I want to be. That's what I want to do, right? I want to help these people. I want to help the families, and even in my role, we all play a part in delivering this medicine and the medicines of the companies that we're in. And so for me, that was transformational too. And I sort of said, this is the industry I want to be in. These are the people I want to help. So.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Miriam or Lakeisha? Whichever one. Go ahead.
Thanks so much, Jim, for sharing that. I think that was, I always think like, of the things I didn't think I would be capable of when I first started at Southern and how I grew. I know I had great mentors. I had Amy, I had Patty, but before I met them and before I tried to take advantage of the Business Success Center, I was not a confident individual. I had gone in interviews and I wasn't getting the job. So I feel like I lost kind of hope in myself. But I feel like once I started to talk to other professionals, I gained this additional level of confidence. I started to attend the Women's Leadership Seminar, and I learned all these skills, like the most simplest thing, like body language. And slowly but surely, throughout the course of the semester, I started to evolve into someone who had more confidence. And I think that's when I really started to see the ball rolling. And like, I remember when I first went to see Patty Kant, the internship coordinator, she told me, she's like, Miriam, let me help you apply for an internship. And I told her, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get this internship. And she's like, so you're going to miss, why? If you apply, the worst that can happen is you get a no, but you'll miss that chance of getting a yes. And I think that those were great moments throughout my Southern journey that I think brought me here today. I received an offer from Ernst & Young while I was a junior at Southern. If you had asked me that 4 years ago, I would tell you there's no way I would ever receive an offer while I was in school. So I would say like just that experience that I had with like my professors and my mentors shaped me into who I am today. So always seek out the experts in your field, and they can literally be your professors. So just seek them out and you'd be surprised what you'll learn from them.
Thank you. It's wonderful. Lakeisha.
Yeah, just listening to both James and Miriam, there have been many moments that have impacted my career, but the one that early on impacted my career was when I landed at this investment boutique as a human service major. I'm like, what am I doing here? How am I going to do this? And really had a very different experience and found that I had a skill set that I wasn't aware of and a passion for something that I had never been involved with. And because of that, it landed me right back at Southern in the School of Business, charting a completely different path that I had never imagined. And just taking that journey and having these different moments where I've questioned myself, can I do this? What am I doing here? Then getting that confidence and understanding not only am I supposed to be here, you're good at what you're doing and this is your space. And to be where I am now in my career, I never would have imagined this place and what's to come. There's some new things that are on the horizon that if I hadn't taken those risks and had that confidence to take those risks and have that board of directors to lean on to kind of nudge me, I definitely would not have found myself where I am right now. So lean into those networks, take those risks, and know that chasing your passion is very rewarding.
It sure is. So we've talked about a lot of great things that have helped shape your career paths and gotten you where you're at. We have students who will be graduating soon. And can you advise them on some things they should look out for that might indicate, there might be some red flags that might say you maybe you're not in the right place? Think of anything to share? Miriam, you have anything?
I just started my career not too long ago, as I just graduated from Southern and then started shortly after at EY. I just think students don't have to jump at every opportunity. I think if something is not a fit for you, it is okay to turn it down. I feel like when I first graduated, I felt this pressure to start working full time, but sometimes some things are just not in the cards for you and it's okay to turn it down. And always ask questions. I think like before I graduated, I never thought, oh, I could maybe negotiate my salary. I'm just getting out of school, but you know, I'm new. So maybe that's, but then attending that seminar, I learned that it doesn't matter if you're just starting your career. You know your worth. So it just aligns with the fact that if don't just jump at every opportunity, it's okay to turn it down.
That's good advice.
But I'll just build on that. And as cliche as this may sound, I would say trust your gut, your intuition. If you get that knot in your stomach, there's a reason. And Don't jump at every opportunity, but if it feels right, go for it. You'll know.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and I would also be careful on how comfortable something is, right? You want to take risks at this stage of your career. You want to do things that, might excite you, but might be a little risky, maybe out of your comfort zone. And you want to look at it holistically, right? Like, why am I doing this, right? What's it, what's my, how is this going to help me in my career? Is it something I'm impassioned by? If it's just comfortable, maybe something you know really well, you don't necessarily see the long kind of term influence on your career path, question it, right? Say, is this, what am I really doing here? We don't often get a lot of opportunities to take chances and risks, but, if something that you think is going to benefit you or impassion you, don't be afraid if there's a portion of it. You'd be surprised at how much you know and how much you'd be able to accomplish beyond what you think you're capable of if when you go into these situations. So I think in what I've experienced, a lot of people will always go for the more comfortable solution, but it may not be the best for your career path, especially coming out with an MBA. You have, you're obviously all, excited to kind of do the next thing. You've taken this step with your career. So I have to believe that maybe you're risk takers. And the fact that you're here tonight, like you're looking for this advice, you're impassioned, right? Utilize that. That's something that I can tell you all of us look for in industry. We look for that sort of bright-eyed kind of want to do the next great thing person. I think, so don't be afraid to use it. Don't be afraid to take risks. A red flag to me, Amy, would be it's really comfortable, maybe it's good pay, but, it's like, I don't necessarily see, how it's going to benefit me down the road. So that would be my advice. And I think the three of us have done that. I think it's, did well for us.
That's great. So let's turn it around. So I asked about red flags. What are things students should look for in a possible career in their first job out of undergrad or grad school that is an indication that it's a great place to be? Any of you can go ahead and
I could probably kick us off. I think, when you interview with a company, depending on who you're interviewing with, you want to ask about the culture. You want to, if you want to understand the culture of the company you're going into. Too often, the culture might not be commensurate with your expectations about kind of movement, growth, or even, how fulfilling, it might be to be there. If you get yourself into a situation where the culture of the company doesn't match, your expectations and your vision for your passion, and again, I have to assume based on your being here tonight, et cetera, that you're impassioned to kind of move forward, you want to avoid it. And again, don't be afraid to ask the question in an interview. What's the culture of the company like? Tell me a little bit about, the culture of the company. I think there are companies that really focus on culture. There are companies that just don't. And usually you can base you'll sense it in the interview, and but it's somewhat debilitating to get yourself caught up in a company that may not have a culture, again, that is going to kind of give you what you need.
I'll just add to that and remind folks that when you're interviewing, it's a two-way process. Not only are you interviewing, they're interviewing you, you're also interviewing that organization, and culture is, I can't double down enough on what Jim said. Culture is very key. If the culture doesn't align with who you are and what you're looking to get out of the opportunity, it's not going to be a pleasant experience, and you may find yourself back into the interviewing process much sooner than what you anticipated. There's ways to determine the culture outside of the interview by going on websites like Glassdoor and other platforms of that nature to go over those, to see some of those reviews of the organization. LinkedIn is a great way to find out about a company and their culture as well. So culture is very key. You want to make sure that the culture is a good fit for you.
Just to go off of what Lakeisha and Jim said, is you want to go to a company or a firm that's maybe more involved in the community. That's something that I personally, like my firm is involved in the community. They like to give back to their communities, or like if for myself, for example, I can give back to the community that I know. So I would say culture is important. And then when you go for an interview, like Keisha said, it's a two-way process. And then also something to seek out is that you want to seek a role in which you never stop learning. Every day for me, myself, like since October, I have learned something new every single day. And I think that that has been tremendous for my growth. And I would recommend that for anyone who's graduating soon, that you seek out opportunities in which you'll learn every day, because you never want to stop learning. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So we're talking a lot about culture, and something that's sort of impacted companies' culture in the last couple of years has been COVID and the pandemic. Can you tell me a little bit about what your company has done to maintain the culture, or just maintain that sense of normalcy, or what they've done, and how, more importantly, how those things what's going to stay the same now that we're sort of transitioning into our new normal, and what our students can expect from work environments as they enter the workforce.
So I'll just go off of what Amy asked. And for myself personally, I feel like the pandemic has positively affected the workplace. There is more flexibility, especially for parents. You don't have to choose as to whether your job takes precedence over your family. Being at EY, I feel like they have made me comfortable in the sense that they have made sure that I've had resources I need to be successful. But we also do have moments where we meet up in person and we have our collaborations. So I feel like it's a two-way street. You can have staying at home, but then also meeting up and seeing people face to face is a different sense of professionalism that you'll learn. But yeah, so far for myself, my experience has been during the pandemic has actually opened more doors. And I know that many students will see that as they're going into their careers as well.
It's great to hear. Thanks.
For me here at Key, the pandemic really opened up a lot of opportunities to network, and Key created a space where we were engaging in conversations and making new relationships, having virtual coffee chats with folks that we would have never thought to engage with, because the virtual environment just made it more tangible. We have continued that culture, although that we're back in person in some regard. We do a lot of collaborating virtually. We do a lot of getting together across the organization, which is Maine to Alaska. Really have built some strong connections, and my network has grown both internally and externally because of COVID. I have probably made some of my more meaningful relationships professionally during this time.
Great.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, it's interesting, right? You're all graduating at a time when there's more opportunity as a result of, first of all, the job market is phenomenal. But also you have an opportunity to work in places that are, kind of outside your driving zone, right? And, and companies have an opportunity to seek out talent, beyond sort of the office perimeter, right? And in labor markets that are especially tight labor markets like the one I'm in, it's really given us a lot of opportunity to bring people in from other states or other countries. And I think it's been impactful in that regard. The advice I give people about the hybrid workplace is not to be a stranger to the office, in the sense that it's great to have I do think it's beneficial to the culture and to the work-life balance, which is always, everybody struggles with that, right? It's especially when you're climbing your career and you're trying to get, kind of positioned. It's a challenge, right? And I know a lot of people have kids, and so you want to make sure you get that work-life responsibility. So what I typically tell people is, when you come into the office, you want to come in for meaningful experiences. You want to have meaningful interactions. So, and that's really, it's really sort of up to you to figure out what those are, right, in your particular environment. So for example, I'm here today because we have a board meeting, and even though it was hybrid, I want it to be in person because, I think it's meaningful, and I think it's important from a company culture perspective, and even from a topic perspective, to be in the room, and I think, for various, sort of important interactions, it's really good from maintaining your network, maintaining your kind of presence in an organization, and your ability to kind of move forward. I do think face-to-face interaction is really important. That's not to say it's like, every day, I think, like I said, I think but even for people that are working, out of state, et cetera, they typically are traveling for a week, a month, and they're in the office, et cetera, because they understand that, those face-to-face interactions really do matter in maintaining that kind of office culture. And I think people are now getting in the swing of it, maybe more than they were a year ago, in terms of how to manage those days in the office and days out of the office. And I think it's certainly more flexible, and the expectations have changed, and the technology, right, has really gotten a lot better. And so it's a great opportunity to kind of come in. But what I would say is, the workplace has definitely changed, but what hasn't changed is the importance of in-person interactions and your ability to maintain those relationships beyond the square that we're in tonight, and have those meaningful interactions that will help you in your career growth. So.
And I'll just add that I agree with that. I am in the office most days, and as in my external relations role, it's important for me to know what's going on in the School of Business so that I can promote it and we can talk about it. And many of the things I hear about just in passing, the water cooler talk, essentially, where people just tell me things and I never would have known about it. It's not email worthy, and but it is, but it wouldn't get to me otherwise. So I agree with that. I want to hear about your time at Southern, a great memory that you have, something fun or meaningful or anything.
I'll start. I when I went to the business school, I remember I had a professor, and it was actually business law, and we had to do a project, and it was just, I just remember the focus on presentation skills. I think it was you, Miriam, who mentioned presentation, and how important that is. And I just remember, the class and how exciting it was. And for me, that was, it was one of the things that made me sure that I was kind of pursuing the right thing. And I think the instructors and the way they're all passionate about what they do. And, I think that was a very memorable kind of class and kind of moment for me, and ensuring my kind of move from the technology to the more business side of it was the right kind of path to go on. So that was, I also got a parking ticket. That was very memorable. But that's about it. But those were my two probably most memorable experiences.
Great.
Oh gosh, undergrad, and this is probably very silly. I remember my first experience on campus, going to register. I'm going to date myself now, being in the basement of Inglewood, and that's where the bookstore was located. And I remember saying, "Oh, this doesn't look much different than high school. I expected something different." But fast forwarding to my experience with the business school, similar to Jim, we had some really great professors, but I found the group activities in those classes the most meaningful, being able to learn new skills and build relationships and networks that still exist today. So yeah.
That building does kind of look like a high school, so you're not too far off.
Inglewood has come a long way. Ingleman, not Inglewood.
Ingleman, yeah.
Ingleman.
Miriam, can you think back a whole year to your college experience?
I just think I have so many memorable experiences at Southern, but just one of my memorable experiences is taking a tax class and thinking, oh my God, how am I going to get through this class? Tax may not be the most interesting topic, but coming out of it, having a great relationship with the professor till this day. And I think that just comes down to networking. Professor Frank Bovino, he did a mock interview with me before I went for my interview at EY. he just became such an amazing resource. Till this day, we message back and forth. So I have to say his class was the most memorable. And I think this also goes to like pre-pandemic, because before the pandemic, after class, I would always stop and speak to my professors. And I want to encourage students that are going to class in person to do that. Take a couple of minutes after class, get to know your professor. And even if you're taking a class virtually, send them an email, tell them that you want to set up some time to talk to them, even if it's for 15 minutes. Because believe me, that'll go a long way. They'll become a part of your network. And down the road, you never know, they might just be your connection into your next role.
They might be on your personal board of directors. Good. So you all have peppered your remarks with the answer to this last question. But I'm going to ask it anyway. What tips do you have for students who are heading out to interview for jobs? It could be internships, it could be for their career. Summer's a time that there's a lot of internships happening as well. So when it comes time to go out and look for jobs, what advice do you have?
Go
ahead,
ahead,
Miriam. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So I would say don't wait till it's too late, because you have all these resources available to you before you graduate. And once you leave Southern, you won't have those same resources available. So don't start too late. Start in your sophomore year, start in your junior year. And if you've waited, it's not too late to start in your senior year, because there's so many things that are available, such as one event that would happen at Southern throughout the year multiple times would be like Resumania. And it's like, you don't think you need it until you start to go out and interview for jobs. And it's like, wow, it's a great resource from other professionals, because they can help set you up to be able to submit your resume. And I think those are the things that helped me when I started to apply for jobs as well as internships. So even if you're not going into a full-time role, just make sure you attend these events and take advantage of all the resources, not just from like the Office of Career and Professional Development, but the Business Success Center has so many resources available. Patty, she works with students to help them get set up on internships. So yeah, just take advantage of those, because that will just help prepare you for your next role when you graduate.
You telling students to have their resume done sophomore year. Patty's on this call and I bet she's clapping right now.
I started that early, and I'm so grateful, because now I still to this day use her template. And it was one of the greatest things that I took away from Southern. So I have to give that advice to the students that will be graduating soon.
That's wonderful. Thanks.
I'll just echo what Miriam said and lean into your resources, especially on campus. There's such a wealth of knowledge and resources, the evolution of what the campus offers now compared to when I was there. I want to come back and tap into the resources as an alum, because they're so valuable. Lean into your networks. Those relationships are very, very important. Don't be afraid to reach out and make those connections and ask those questions. And lastly, I'll say, stay true to who you are. Don't trade your authenticity for approval. Trust your gut and know that what's for you is for you.
Yeah, I agree. I think, definitely utilize all the resources that the school offers you. I mean, that's one of the great things about the program. And professors have a great network that they can link you into as well, and you want to take advantage of that. But I also completely agree that, with Lakeisha, you are your biggest resource. When you interview, one of the things that I think we all look for is, confidence, your confidence in yourself, and your confidence in why you're there. And your passion and your just overall excitement about the reason that you're there. I think it can be a little nervous sometimes, especially if you're going for a job that you really want, and you're meeting with someone who you don't know, and you're in a building you've never been in, and it's like overwhelming. And you've all done this, I'm sure. But you should be confident, because you've gone through a great program. You're ambitious. And you know that you can do it. And I think believing in yourself comes through in an interview. I know that when I interview people that are nervous, I try and spend the first couple of minutes trying to calm them down, so I can really sort of see, kind of what they're capable of. But then you have other people that come right in and they're really excited and they ask a lot of questions. Ask questions about the company. That's really important that you're interviewing with. Don't let it be, one of my colleagues here said, make sure it's a two-way conversation. It couldn't be more true. You want to ask questions. You want to let them know that you're interested in the company. You want to know a lot about the company when you walk in there. You want to read the press releases. You want to understand the person's background that you're meeting with, what companies they came from. You want to understand the industry, read, be educated when you walk in there. Too often I meet folks who come in and they don't really even understand the industry we're in. They're here because it's a job. And, I'm going to pick the person that's taken the time to really, they want to be at the company. And, I think that's really, really important. And it's definitely noticeable in the interviews. And so I think that's definitely some good advice. But I go back to what I said when we first started this, and if you pick sort of opportunities that you really are impassioned about and companies that have a great culture, et cetera, you're going to be excited when you get there and you're going to show that, and that's going to come through. Focus on those organizations, not every opportunity that kind of matches your LinkedIn search, and you'll be great. But again, I do believe that, if you truly are excited about the opportunity, it does come through, and we do see it.
Great. You talked about LinkedIn. Can you tell me if companies are looking at students' LinkedIn when they are interviewing for jobs?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So they should have an updated LinkedIn profile.
Yes. Your LinkedIn profile is,
mm-hmm.
It couldn't be more important.
Mm-hmm.
It's your social media resume.
Definitely. I saw that someone from EY had looked at my profile even before I received the offer. So it's extremely important. They're looking on there and they're seeing how it's set up, that you have it's good to have a picture, a photo up there. But those networks, they matter. And you'll see down the line as you meet more and more people that the first thing they do, they'll add you on LinkedIn, and then your connections will slowly grow. So it's worth it. Definitely start that before you go out into, the workforce, before you even graduate. Start making your LinkedIn, because that will be how other professionals will find you.
And try not to use it as a personal kind of platform. You definitely want to recognize that this is your professional profile. And so when you like things, and even when you respond to things, all of that kind of draws the image of you as a professional. So use it that way. I mean, that's really important. I would say all employers now recruit from LinkedIn. And so it couldn't be more important.
Great. And so for those students who are on this call, and you're feeling like maybe your LinkedIn profile isn't where it should be, if you're a business student, you can log on to Handshake, and it's in some LinkedIn tips are in our resources. If you are not a business student, or if you are not on Handshake yet, you can reach out to Patty Conti, Patricia Conti, and she can kind of she can send you that information. We have some tips on how to take a nice profile photo, a professional profile photo with your phone. You don't need a high quality high res image for LinkedIn. It's a small image, so you can update it as often as you need to. But yeah, an image on there is important, and we can help you with that.
I'm not sure if you remember, Amy, when you helped me take my first LinkedIn photo. So if anyone needs help, go to Amy. Mm-hmm. She's great at it.
I have in my office some dollar store poster board to sort of set up a little studio that we did. One of the tutorials was done by our university photographer, and she showed us, you stand here, and here's how you make the lighting, and here's what kind of shirt to wear, and here's what colors to wear. And so, yeah, it can be done. You don't need a blazer. You don't need professional lighting. It can be done nicely just with your phone. Just checking the chat. I don't know if we have any questions in the chat yet. Greg or Doreen, are there any questions? No questions. All right, so for those of you that are on the call, if you have questions, now would be a great time to drop them in. Panelists, is there anything else? Is there anything that you had hoped to convey today that you didn't get an opportunity to talk about based on my questions?
I would congratulate everyone on taking the program and, kind of putting this into your career belt. It's a great thing. And, congratulations to everybody for taking the step.
Thanks. All right. Just checking. Yeah. Oh, so Greg has enabled audio and video. So audience members, if you would like to unmute yourself or turn on your camera, you can ask questions or make comments or. There's the famous Patty Conti. Hey, Frank.
Hey,
Nice
thanks
to
for coming
see you.
out to the panelists. Thanks for doing this, James.
Thank you all so much. It was so insightful and inspiring to hear from you. Really happy to be a part of it tonight.
Right.
Thanks. We have a question. When applying to jobs, what skills do employers look for? Oh, that's a good question.
I think it depends on, sort of the level of the role that you're applying for. And then I would actually argue there's kind of like two tracks and, business. There's sort of the management track, which you're all on. And then there's the individual contributor, and the questions vary based on that. In the management track, they're typically looking for area expertise, like, what your experiences are. So they're going to ask you about your experiences, some of the things you've accomplished. I think one of the things that we look for is a good understanding of the outcome of what you did. So the company was able to because right? Or, I contribute, I was a big part of the initiative where we were able to reach more patients or, make more product, or, they want to understand how you fit in with the organizations that you've worked for and your understanding of that role. We tend to have a lot of questions around that. From a skills perspective, I think, like, for example, in my group, I look for expertise in their particular discipline that they're looking for, or, their skill for learning it, right? So, I'll take somebody with a great attitude and an ambition and drive over somebody who's done it for 5 years any day of the week. I mean, because they come in with that passion. I think employers look for that. So in addition to skills, I think we look for that kind of, that passion and drive. So that's typically, the original career search, it's a skill-based search that employers do now, right? They're looking for keywords, they're going through LinkedIn, and so, it's really important that you populate keywords about sort of what you're looking to do into your profile. And you can find those like by looking at similar profiles for the job that you're rolling for, like what do people have in there? What have they done? You can also populate it from the job description that you're applying for. You can drop that in your LinkedIn profile so that, it shows that you've done it. You want to pay particular attention to that. So if there's a particular skill that someone, it's right at the top of the list that they're looking for, like able to organize, diverse thinking into a single, solution, you want to definitely focus on that. It tends to get less important as you read down the bullet points. So that's typically what we, because those are the questions we're going to ask right when we get into interviews. And the other thing I would say is when you're interviewing it from a skills perspective, look at the background of the person. Like if you're interviewing the CFO, for example, he's going to ask you questions that are specifically related to maybe operations or, how you've driven value into the organization. So you'll want to prep for that. That's typically how we do it, if that's helpful.
I just want to add something based off what Jim said. Yes, employers are looking for your skills or what can you bring to their company. But at the same time, they also understand that you're a student that's just graduated. So just be your authentic self. Like you don't over prepare. Just be your genuine self. And like he said, it's all about your personality. Like EY, for example, they want people who are able to work in a team. You don't need to have experience for that. You can even reference a time in class where you collaborated in a team. I know that's what I did when I interviewed. And I think you can take so much experience from school. You can say, I was involved in this club. I did this extracurricular activity. So it's not always work experience that they look for. And I think that's especially important for students because some of us don't have that much experience. We might have an internship or we may not have an internship. So just be yourself and then ask questions, be open-minded. And I think that that's how you can set yourself up for success.
I agree with that. Identify the skills that you've used in school that are transferable to the job, to the career, to what the organization is looking for. Be curious, express that curiosity and the willingness to want to learn. Most employers, they would prefer, as Jim said, someone that is curious and has that ambition because they know that that person will be very successful because they have that willingness to want to learn something different or learn more and grow versus someone who comes in that's very experienced, that not necessarily may think they know it all, but have more knowledge than what they, what am I trying to say here? They have more knowledge than and know more than what they are looking for at that point, if that makes sense. I didn't articulate that very well, but be curious and be willing to learn and express that curiosity.
That actually leads into the next question, which is, what are some example questions to ask employers when interviewing? How do we show our curiosity when I ask our questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can ask, you should ask about the company. You should ask about, what's the culture like in your team? What have you got? What are some of the projects that we're doing right now? Kind of what's the long-term plan for products, whatever, how do we see ourselves and compared to some of our competitors? Like, you want to be thinking about kind of like, things that they want to answer, things that excite them, about the passion about their company. I like when people ask about the culture because then I know it matters to them. And I think that's really important. I like when people have a little background on our products and about the patients we serve, because then I know they're not wholly in it just for like, hey, I want to get a great paying job or whatever, right? They actually care a little bit about the industry. So we like when, questions you ask are about specifically about, show that you have interest in the business that you're applying to. And I think, students tend to have a hard time sometimes drawing from personal, because they don't have that corporate experience, like Lakeisha was just saying. And so, but don't be afraid to draw off your personal experience and don't be ashamed of that. They know that when you came in the door, and you can draw off previous experiences or even other people's experience. So, I have a colleague who did this, and one of the things I learned from that was, or et cetera. So, but just don't be set back from it or nervous, or don't be afraid to go at the question, even if because you don't have the experience. They know you don't have the experience. What they're looking for is, how are you going to attack it? How would you approach it? And that's what you can focus on, your approach, right?
That's particularly good advice for business students, because a lot of times they're going into industries that like life sciences, for example. They're not scientists. They may be accountants. They may be marketing or HR or management. And so to show interest in the industry, even if they don't have the specific experience with that topic, is good advice.
If I could add, Amy, I would also ask the person that you're interviewing with about what drew them to that profession. Yeah. And what do they find most rewarding, and to walk you through a typical day of their life. I find that you get a more personal experience of that company, and you have the opportunity to make personal connections and build a relationship during that interview as well.
That's great advice. Good. The last question is, what questions do students have the hardest time answering in an interview? So students or early entry people who are entering a career.
I think again, I go back. I think where they get the most uncomfortable is when they start trying to draw from experience that they don't have, right? But again, I think it goes back to Amy, what we were saying about go by your approach. How would you do this? What's your method, right? Like, what would you look for? I also sometimes we have people that immediately try and solve the problem, Like, okay, when they jump right to a solution, and, that solution might not be appropriate for the company you're in. One of the things you want to say is, well, we have to take a look at a few different things here. We'd want to understand kind of like what the effect would be on, X or Y. And don't be afraid to think about it and think openly about it. I mean, it's if they're looking for your approach, again, they know, sort of that you've come in, but when I at least I know in my, particular team and industry, when I ask questions to some of our interns and they're coming in about kind of like, so tell me a little bit about your background in, project management, for example. They're like, you just want to say, well, I would approach it using kind of like what the company's methodology. I would take the time to learn it. I think it's really important that we're thoughtful. Just talk about your approach, because your approach is you. That's your style, right?
Just to kind of add on to that, thank you for sharing, by the way. That's so insightful for students who are going into their professional fields. But also a question that I had the hardest time on any interview is like, tell me about yourself. It seems like a simple question, but it also seems it is complicated when you answer it. And I think just give a history about like who you are, where you come from, how did you end up where you are? It doesn't necessarily have to be a professional experience. And I think this resonates with a lot of students on this call because, like I said earlier, a lot of us don't have a lot of experience. So just kind of your history. How did you get to Southern, and what are some of your goals and aspirations? Just kind of look back at that and then share that with your interviewer. And just don't, like, I would say, like, don't overthink it. But I know before every interview, we all overthink it. But I just be your authentic self, and and have a conversation. Like, don't let them just ask you questions and it all of a sudden becomes a stressful situation for the interviewee. Just kind of turn that interview into a back and almost like a conversation. And I think then that interview will be more successful.
Good. I just want to let students know that we, of course, do mock interviews. So you can set up an appointment with the Business Success Center to do mock interviews, which really helps you sort of formulate what you might say and sort of get the cobwebs off of your answers. We also, if you're not ready for that, we have what's called Big Interview that students have access to, and it is a virtual platform. So you can set up a virtual mock interview and you can modify it. Maybe it's a entry-level accounting position and you want an easy interview, and that interview will populate and you can record yourself answering the questions, play it back, practice as many times as you want, make it more difficult. And then that will, and then maybe make an appointment with Patty and do your true mock interview. And then, then you're ready to go. So those resources are available to all business students. And we're just about out of time. Looks like
I hope this was helpful.
this was wonderful. It was great.
It was great.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Any final questions in our last 2 minutes?
I'll just throw one more thing out there for interviews. Pay attention to your body language. That's really, really important too in a meeting, like in an interview. Like, it also shows your engagement in the conversation. So, that's really one of the things I learned in presentation school in my MBA program. You definitely want to pay attention to your body language. That's kind of critical too. That'll also express how nervous you are. You get it.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's great advice. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Jim, Miriam, Lakeisha. It was great. It was full of useful information. I took notes. I'm sure the students did as well. And get ready for us to invite you back.
Thank you. I appreciate being here with you all tonight.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Thank
very
you for
much.
having us. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
All right.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.